in one workout. But and this is something that I'm still going off of that hardcore high school double sessions type thing, or and so like I know that you can do that for about 2 weeks or so, but is there like how long would you say that I or anyone else can do those like 2 intense workouts a day?
Till you crash and burn. It's hard to say. It's really individualized, and there's so many, obviously multiple external factors to that. But anytime you got a lot of forks in the fire, I would, because your classes are a priority because you have to teach those, so those aren't going to change. Anytime that I have multiple variables going on, I automatically just kind of default to 2 strength training days a week, just like a Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday kind of thing.
Okay.
Full body lifts, and then obviously it takes the back burner to the other stuff. Unless it becomes the priority, then obviously it would switch. But with uncommon workouts, as high volume as they are, and then a lot of the volume in the cardio sessions for classes, strength's going to have to be like, I'd keep that at twice a week.
Right.
The big major lifts. What's that?
Like 2 full body workouts?
Yeah. And then that way, because 2 workouts, you can still make a progression in. You can still build them off each other. But the biggest thing is just managing all that fatigue, and not expecting to make progressions every week. It might become bi-weekly, and it might become. It's hard to say because uncommons, it's like CrossFit. It's hard to know what's going on, and
that's why I was thinking that I want the foundation to be my strength workout, which I can control.
Yeah. I'd go 2 days a week at uncommon then, and then 2 or 3 days strength training.
Okay.
But I try to stay away from the 2 a days just because it's hard to manage, and on top of it, just not really necessary. I mean, you get a hard, heavy training session in for a day. I mean, that'll put you down. Like I said, I mean, I'm in like the peak of my training right now. And granted, it's specific for me, but I mean, I'm only going 4 sessions a week total.
Okay.
And my ass is whooped. I am like destroyed. Like the volume is at its max. I mean, it is a ton of work right now. And it's only 4 days a week. So not saying you got to cut it back to 4 days, but I'm just saying like if you can really hone in, and once you get really deep into the strength, or once you get really deep into the conditioning, there's a lot of fatigue and recovery putting into just one training session. When we spread ourselves thin, we stay close to the surface. So even though they're hard sessions for the day, we haven't gotten that deep, so we really haven't like opened up the body to how strenuous it could be, just because we haven't been able to adapt that deep into that realm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So as obviously it's an exponential progress, right? So as you get stronger, you're going to get more and more fatigued doing more and more work. Or as you get more into uncommon athlete, the more you're conditioned to it, the more output you'll be able to put into it, but the more output with the volume still going up. You know what I mean? Like the quality of the style of training will start becoming exponential in its utilization for your recovery abilities and stuff. So that's what I try to focus on.
So that's it, and and this was totally unplanned, but that's actually a good bit of information as far as prioritization, because we're talking about how do we get the most bang for our buck as far as energy investment.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think we probably just need to leave it right there and just get the rest of it on the recording. So.
I'm recording right now, so I'll snip this in. And
okay.
yeah, I try to. I'm done making the mistake of like waiting to record. I'm just hitting record because you never know when you're gonna throw something good.
You can trim this part out.
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. So, on that note, let's go ahead and get the official start.
But yeah, let's. I mean,
let me think. What was? I don't know. I'll make something up. You know that I kind of liked the way I did the intro last time, but my brain is kind of fried, so I'm just
let's just roll with it, man. Let's just keep it casual today. Let's just talk.
Okay. And we can always pull snippets out. So this is I like that. This doesn't have to be formal. This is I can turn off the radio announcer voice and
yeah. just let's
so we'll just jump into it.
Yeah, let's keep going with your story. Just lay out. Tell me what you're doing right now, and then let me throw in my 2 cents, and then that'll be our segue into your organized talk of how you want to roll this.
Okay. All right. So
tell me about your training this week, Dwayne. Tell me what's going on.
All right. So
and tell me where you want to go.
Okay. All right. So just to talk a little bit about fitness goals, I think that's a good premise to talk about what I've been doing this week. So if I had to set my major goals, maybe my top 2 or 3 goals, I would say number 1 is just overall strength and confidence through the different movements and just overall body confidence, you know, feeling like I don't have to worry about my knees hurting, or I don't have to worry about my back hurting or anything, and just being able to take that off the table to say, hey, this is my workout for the day, and I'm going to execute it to the best of my ability, and I don't have to worry about anything hurting. I don't have to worry about, you know, getting the right numbers or not hitting certain numbers. I'm just going to confidently execute the planned workout. So that would probably be number 1. Number 2 is body composition. So if I can, you know, do whatever I can to maintain lean muscle mass, but get leaner physically. So that would probably be number 2. And number 3 would just be proficiency through the different lifts. So just more like lift mechanics, squat mechanics, deadlift mechanics, and probably to a lesser extent, having good mechanics through the Olympic lifts. Mm. So those would probably be my 3 top goals. Keeping that in mind, I have not been on my strength routine probably for about the last month or so, because I've been testing some stuff out, you know, trying to do some different things. And that actually is a good segue back into one of our previous podcasts, just about the importance of having a written plan before we even walk into the gym, or, you know, before the day, knowing what I plan to do. So it's easier to stick to it. You know, I found that for myself, it just doesn't work for me to go in. For a long time, I would write out my plan, but I would wait until I got to the gym to write it out. Mm-hmm. So now I understand the importance of, you know, planning out at least like my 4 weeks or so. You know, I have numbers to work with, so I can plug in some numbers, and having like at least minimum a 4-week set of goals as far as my strength training. So that would probably be my first priority as far as training. My second priority, I've been trying a new workout, and it's built on more, it's a combination of strength training, and it also incorporates some HIIT stuff, some CrossFit stuff, but it's probably more organized than what I've experienced from CrossFit. So it's a good intermediary between CrossFit and just the strict discipline of my strength routine. So it fits right in the middle. And they alternate between strength training and conditioning workouts. The other thing I like about that is something that we've talked about in another podcast, just the fact that because I'm a trainer, I don't necessarily trust myself to do all of my programming. So
Right.
I think that it's hard to hit that sweet spot, and just like you and I were talking earlier, and it's not necessarily that I go easy on myself. Sometimes I go extremely hard on myself, and it's sometimes it's hard to manage that. Am I prioritizing my workout time as effectively as I can to make sure I'm getting the best return as I can? And I'm still stuck in the mind state of high school and college where those wrestling workouts were excruciating. So I try to, somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm still trying to get to that point because that's the level of strength and conditioning that I aspire to. So in the back of my mind, it's like these workouts have to be as excruciating as practice was back then. And, we're easily 20 years removed from that. So goals are different, priorities are different. So that's something else that I kind of wrestle with as far as my own program. But that's just like a good over. Oh, and one more thing, as a personal trainer, so I'm in group fitness, so I'm doing, at least a handful of PT sessions every week, which those aren't necessary. I don't count those as part of my workout. I may be demonstrating some movements and stuff like that, but that's not part of my workout. But my group fitness work, that is part of my workout. I'm doing 2 HIIT classes and 2 spin classes a week. So, and especially, I feel like I've built the reputation as an instructor that I'll show that I'm down there in the grind. I'm sucking and I'm hating life just like the people that I'm coaching.
I hope they're not hating life. I hope you're making it fun.
Right. Well, it's balance. It's all about balance. So I want to show them that I'm working just as hard as they are, while I'm able to talk, while I'm able to teach, while I'm able to inject some humor to make it fun, stuff like that. So that's something that has to be a priority, but I don't want it to necessarily take away from my personal goals. So I don't, if at any point, I could be knocking it out the park with my personal workouts, but my ability to teach might decline, then that would be a fail to me. So just trying to find balance across those, especially those 3 areas. So I have my strength workout. I have more of a strength/conditioning workout that I don't plan at all, and that's important to me. And then I have my group fitness classes/PT clients. So those are the things that I need to find out as far as my time and energy as a resource, trying to prioritize those resources to get the best return.
Right. So yeah.
So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So with that, we can spread ourselves too thin when there's multiple variables going on. The double workouts, the 6 days a week workouts, things like that. Especially, we have to remember we don't want to constantly be in a display mode. We want to be in a developmental mode. So exertion and effort is subjective, right? So, for example, somebody really deconditioned can give a maximal effort in a workout session or whatever, and from the objective standpoint, from the outside, it's not really a whole heck of a lot, right? Because they're deconditioned. So even though they're giving all out, they've busted their balls, they're smoked at the end of the session. It simply wasn't all that much work because they haven't trained into it, right? So with that, there's the opposite spectrum. When we start doing a whole bunch of stuff, when we start shotgunning and we have a lot of goals that we want to hit and we attack them all at once, and we put 3 or 4 days in the strength training, we put 3 or 4 days in the metconning, and we put 3 or 4 days into the aerobic fitness. That's a lot of our energy and recovery resources spread really, really thin. So from a perceived exertion standpoint, we're going all out, right? Because it's one thing to lift fresh, and it's another thing to lift under an immense amount of fatigue. And you don't necessarily have to always feel that fatigue. It's general underlying. It's still there. So with that, when we're spread thin like that, we're doing a whole bunch of display, but we're not able to get deep into any one of the categories. So when we can't get deep into any one of those categories you're trying to get better at, we're not in that developmental mode. We're still on display, right? Display is all surface level. It's just showing off what we're currently capable of, but it's not getting into the specifics of each modality that you're trying to improve. Not that you're not trying, but just by nature of being spread so thin in all your workouts. So this would be a factor of where too much is what we're not reaping the benefits that we're putting out, right? There's diminishing returns. So in fact, I try to keep all my clients, even if they do have multiple goals, to 4 to 5 days of training, and most all the times, even more frequent than just 4 to 5 days of training, the number one rule is just one workout a day. Get a quality session in that you can wholeheartedly focus on, you can quantify, you can make sure that you put all your efforts in, your head wasn't distracted by thinking of the next workout, or physically you weren't pre-fatigued by the other workout, right? It's a truly developmental state rather than a display state, right? And a lot of strength and conditioning coaches and a lot of everyone, athletes and coaches, get lost in the display, and they're constantly displaying, and we forget that developing takes time and resources, and we got to focus in. So with that, I think all your goals are great, and I would put them in rank order, and based off of that rank order, divide them up between those 5 training days. Obviously, your conditioning, your classes, you might have 2-a-days with the conditioning classes. I definitely think that won't be an issue, especially if the workouts are spread out far enough, if you can do that. But I would hone in the priorities, spend 2 or 3 days on your number one priority, and then 1 or 2 days on that secondary priority. Obviously, your spin classes not counting. That's something that you can continue to do. And concurrent training, right? Training 2 different modalities, as long as they're spread out, isn't too big of an issue. But what you need to do, or what I would advise, is spending more time getting deep into the major priorities so that you can create that development. So bring this full circle, meaning that deconditioned person who's putting out a whole bunch of effort, they're still, they're super exhausted, they're super beat up, but they didn't do a whole heck of a lot from an objective standpoint. Give that deconditioned person several months of very specific focused training, and say in 3 months, they're still putting out that subjective all-out effort, but because they spent 3 months of development, they have a much larger work capacity, a much larger pool of strength. And so that exertion level was the exact same as it was from day one of being deconditioned. However, the objective output, what they truly did, was 10-fold, 20-fold, 30-fold greater. So then that's when we really start seeing body composition changes, great increases in strength, noticeable increases in conditioning, is because we're focused on developing it rather than spreading thin and constantly displaying. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So just and I'm updating my notes here. Can you tell me again one more time, as far as your recommendation for your clients, what is the max training load that you recommend?
I've never, outside, there's one time that I had somebody on 2-a-days and on a 6-day training program, and it was somebody training up for the CrossFit Regionals game, and it was by nature, because of CrossFit, and it's it's an outlier in terms of training at that level, so it's very temporary. But the only reason it was that many days is just by nature of how many things we had to train for. So we knew with that mindset, though, that there were going to be diminishing returns, and he already had a huge baseline underneath him, which was good, right? We can take that baseline development and put it on display for a little bit. But that's an extreme case. The general recommendations, I like one quality workout a day, 4 to 5 days a week. You're going to get some very potent, serious results in the long run, because again, it's getting it's letting that exponential development happen, right? Being able to squat 200 pounds for a couple sets of 5 isn't as metabolically demanding, isn't as stimulating on the body as being able to squat a couple sets of 5 at 400 pounds, right? The objective work capacity makes a huge difference, right? And in order to get to that, we have to focus in and develop it, right?
Okay. I'd like to get your opinion on something. There was something I read, and I'm sorry, I can't tell you exactly what I read or what or who said it, but this was definitely, I can say that this was a person who I trust, who puts out credible information. So what he said, as a coach, I can take an athlete at 200 pounds, and I'll have to make up some number. So I can take an athlete 200 pounds, 20% body fat, and I can put him through an 8-week routine. He will still be 200 pounds at whatever, 12% body fat. So, and you can adjust the numbers as you see fit, but using that as a broad guideline, like one of the things he specified was, he said, I would have to take that athlete through 2-a-days, and, you know, there would be pluses, minuses, etc. There would be, but in order, obviously, there would be something given up in order to stay within that 8-week programming. But he was basically saying that he could make a significant body composition change in a client in an 8-week period, staying at the same body weight. But one of the integral things was, he said it would have to be 2-a-days. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how many times he's done that, what the repeated effect was, or if he was just saying that in confidence. That way I could kind of develop more thought behind it. But I would want to see how many times he's actually repeated that statement that he's claiming. But secondly, when we're talking body composition change, more so with fat loss, fat loss for me is going to be 90% diet, and lean tissue development is going to be 90% exercise, right? So losing the fat is almost exclusively diet, right? We burn the most fat just at rest, just at existence. We by nature are oxidative with our fat, and we're using the oxidative system the majority of the time, or not the majority of the time, but all the time. And so diet's the number one factor for burning fat. Secondly, 8% in 8 weeks is a huge change. Not saying it's not possible, but you'd have to be honed in very, very precisely on your diet, simultaneously being honed in on your exercise routine, and making sure that you are continually in an anabolic state, not a catabolic state, meaning not training too much to where you're just damaging tissue, and not undertraining to where you're not stimulating. But an increase in that much lean mass to change the ratio by 8% couldn't happen in 8 weeks alone by lean mass, right? Lean mass takes a very long time to develop. I mean, especially as you get closer to your advancement in training, I mean, it can take a year to put on just several pounds of true muscle mass, right? So there's a lot of factors that have to be honed into the T but it's not going to be just by a bunch of exercise. And that's a very bold claim, but it is realistic if you are super tight with nutrition and exercise. And because of how tight you have to be, obviously, I wouldn't say that's the norm at all for anyone, and I wouldn't claim that for somebody, just because I want to make sure that there's realistic expectations and longevity to training. But an 8% change in 8 weeks without losing any lean mass, because you're trying to maintain that weight, that's a lot of work. So I'd be curious to see how many times that's been done repeatedly.
Okay. So basically, you'd have to have, for lack of a better word, you'd have to have pretty much perfect programming and perfect nutrition, and you'd probably have to get a little bit lucky just to pull that off.
Yeah. And obviously, having a huge developed background would help out a lot. But even still, even if I were to make that claim, the way my mind's running, it wouldn't be about 2 a days. It would be about diet. Because again, my preconceived notion is that you're already on a program to where you're developing the most lean tissue possible. That's why you're on the program you're doing, right? My programs aren't like, oh, we're kind of going to develop lean tissue. No, my programs are constantly what is your critical peak that you constantly need to develop as much lean tissue as you need. And it's not just a program, it's a continually fluid program. So wherever your most recent training history was at, that's going to dictate your new training. But I don't ever see it needing to be 2 a days unless you have some sports specificity, right? Unless you're trying to train for something. But from a physique standpoint, that one training session a day is plenty stimulating to do as much lean tissue development as we need. And then the fat reduction is going to be almost exclusively diet. So if somebody had that kind of aggressive goal, we would keep doing what we're doing with the training program, and then we would really hone in on their eating. Like, look, if you mean this, then eating's a 24/7 job compared to training. So
okay. So given that, we and I appreciate your comments on this coach's comment. So, and of course, everything is very specific. I understand that. So let's just kind of throw that out for a second, and let's paint a hypothetical picture of you taking an athlete. We'll say, I don't want to, because the more detail I throw out, the more specific it'll get. So, whatever your thoughts of an average athletic client, what type of body composition change would you feel comfortable expecting? Let's say if we had compliance was not an issue, sit down, we're going to specifically map out, because something that I circled on my notes is you talked about one quality workout. So we have to assume the highest level of quality with the workout. We have to assume, I like to say 80% compliance, but I say that in my research there is little difference between 80 and 100%. So I feel like if I can get someone to 80% compliance, that is reasonable without demanding perfection, which comes with a whole bunch of other issues. So from the mental side, I try to convince a person that, hey, if you can give me 80%, I can give you the same or very close to the results of 100%.
Right.
So we'll say 80+% compliance. We'll say that the program is quality. We'll say 80% compliance with the nutrition program. And let's say over the course of 16 weeks, 4 to 5 days workouts with 80% compliance in all the major areas, what type of gains might you expect, or would you feel comfortable expecting from, from a client?
Yeah. Hard to put an exact number there, but I'll give you the closest answer I can. Is it's going to depend on how far away they are from that goal, and the farther away you are in terms of if you have a lot more fat mass, a lot more adipose tissue, or if you are extremely deconditioned, your results are going to be quicker. Just the opposite of what we'd think, pending that you have high compliance, right? A lot of people confuse this. They think the deconditioned and the obese, for this particular scenario, I say obese just because of our conversation right now, but they think that they're hard gainers, and it's not. In fact, they're the easiest gainers. The issue is compliance. So the fact that compliance isn't an issue, they are going to have robust responses. I like to make the comparison of a dry sponge. So when you're deconditioned, when you're really overweight and you're trying to start moving towards that lean mass or increased conditioning, you're a dry sponge. So you're soaking up everything, right? Everything's a stimulus to you. I think I said it before to you, when you're that deconditioned, going out for a walk is going to make your bench press go up, right? Hitting a couple sets on your bench press is going to make your VO2 max go up, right? You're so deconditioned that you're soaking everything up. So that's a motivating factor for those that are really deconditioned in terms of helping them understand and getting into compliance. Is like, look, all I need from you right now is compliance. Our program isn't going to be complex because you're going to have a robust response. So 16 weeks, I mean, seeing, 16 weeks, body composition, fat mass is being dropped simultaneously, lean mass is increasing, right? That's where it gets really hard when you're more advanced, is having them both simultaneously happening, because generally fat reduction comes in a caloric deficit, but when you're in a caloric deficit, increasing lean mass is really hard. We don't have that issue with the decondition. They're dropping body fat and they're increasing lean tissue all at the same time. So we can see drastic effects. I mean, saying something like 8 to 10% body composition change in 16 weeks is not even crazy. That I wouldn't even bat an eye at that if somebody said that, like, hey, I was really deconditioned in 16 weeks, I changed 10%. I'd be like, yeah, sounds about right. Like, good job. Obviously, I'd be excited for him. I wouldn't blow it off. But your level of conditioning and where you're at in training is going to be, to answer your question directly, how conditioned or how deconditioned you are is going to dictate how robust your response will be. Okay.
Is there, for that, we're still staying with the subject of body position change, and we'll stick with the assumption of 80% compliance with the nutritional program.
Mm-hmm.
And what would be your ratio across those 4 to 5 days? What would be your ratio of strength training to conditioning?
Again, dependent on the client, depending on how out of shape they are and what kind of out of shape they are, because strength training alone may in fact be their conditioning, right? That's what a lot of people, we can lose reality when we're not in the trenches with them, but by getting somebody who's really deconditioned or really obese, doing some air squats is a ton of work for them. That's a lot of conditioning. Or going for a 3% incline walk on the treadmill for 3 or 4 minutes, they might be tapping out. So we have to manage that, and that's definitely going to be case by case basis. But for those that are just starting out, I want to try and be as even as possible with the conditioning and the strength, and then by nature that split will go wherever it needs to go depending on how they're adapting.
Okay. All right. One thing that you've mentioned several times is talking about the deconditioned athlete, and the goal being for them to maintain a certain level of exertion. Mm-hmm. So that's not necessarily looking at their numbers, not necessarily putting high expectations on their output, but trying to get them to consistently exert at a even level or at a predictable level. So I've seen, and I don't want to throw anyone's workout under the bus at all, but how much do you?
But I'm going to.
How much do you scale for that new athlete? Because I'm looking at it from the psychological side. I want this person to commit to this workout, and like we've talked in the past, if you come in and just totally trash this person, it's demoralizing. You may get that one workout out of them, and then they may not come back at all, or they may come back, sometime next week or whatever. It's like, I want you to commit to a certain level of work. Mm-hmm. And that means that I need to scale it way back. Okay, so one of the issues I see with that is this person may come to a gym. There may be a programmed workout on the board, for example, and they see everyone in the gym doing that programmed workout, but their workout has been scaled. So I wonder, is there anything demoralizing about that?
Absolutely. That's why I'm not a fan of quote unquote RX workouts, right? Okay. Even when I do class-based training and workouts, there is sets, reps, and structure, but the environment and the underlying tone is like everybody's training with their own particular reps and intensity, or weights and intensity, based within these guidelines, right? I'm not a fan of hey, a popular one is like males 135, females 95, things like that. It's completely unapplicable. One, that generic, it doesn't even matter male or female. So I'm not. I understand the compliance factor and like the camaraderie and all that, but again, it really, it's good for your hard chargers and those that are already committed, but it really does throw those trying to get into it into a hard spot, because we're not appropriately managing their loads. We're not focused on development, right? Going back to my conversation there, workouts like that are display workouts, right? So I guess that's a really good way to sum up what I'm trying to say. There's developmental workouts, which are individualistic. They're focused on where you're at, and creating a training routine for you, where your display workouts are just what they are, like your CrossFit benchmarks, or just, hey, do this for time or do that for time. You're not developing anything. There's no structure there. There's no reason, right? It's just a display of what you can do. And yeah, you get smoked, and some people just want that. But at the end of the day, when you wonder why you've stalled out or why you've got a nagging injury, it's because you're constantly in display mode and not on an individualistic development mode.
Okay. Yeah, that's well put. Well put. One thing that I've noticed is, and I didn't know how to word this, but I've called it the diminishing returns of additional time spent at the gym. So,
yeah, that's a perfect stuff. You couldn't have said it any better than that. I got a lot to say about that.
so that's obviously borrowing from an economic term. It means that and I really like numbers. I like statistics. I like plotting stuff on a graph. So just to paint like a mental picture, we can plot these numbers on a graph, and depending on as the time spent in the gym increases, performance will increase, and then it'll plateau at some point, and then it'll start to decrease after a while. So as more time is spent, the performance starts to drop, obviously. Mm-hmm. So this, just to bring this home, I had someone at the gym ask me, and I think she had just done like a body pump style workout. So group fitness using more high reps type deal. Then she came to my spin class afterwards, and she did that. So now we're probably on an hour and a half to 2 hours total workout time. And then she asked me, she's like, should I go take another class after this? Another intense class. This wasn't like yoga or stretching or anything. And to me, there's always that feeling, to just bring it home, working out feels good. to a certain extent. You know, it's strenuous, it's stressful, but at the end of the day, it feels good. Whether we get that endorphin rush, i.e., that runner's high, or whether we just feel good about ourselves. So there's that psychological high. So the working out feels good, and I find that, and I've fallen into this trap myself. I just want to stay in the gym for 4 hours, you know, and it's like, there's obviously a point where you're not getting the gains that you think you're getting. And then if it really goes out of hand, you get to the point where we're actually hurting the gains. You're what's the term that you used for you're killing your gains, basically. If you do a really heavy strength workout and then you go for a long run right afterward, you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, you know? you're cross-contaminating, right?
Right. So there's obviously a point, and that's why I called it the diminishing return of time spent in the gym. You know, you have to hit that sweet spot. So, and we've already kind of talked about it, but I know a lot of people fall into that trap to where they just feel that, whether it's a sense of accomplishment or whatever it is, and they just feel that they want to spend more time in the gym. Like, what do you tell that person? You know?
Yeah. So that, I mean, that comes down to just being a coach and a free psychologist at that point. One, it'll start with, this is the importance of a program, to have structure, rhyme, and reason. When you have a program, you complete what's there for the day, and you have a sense of accomplishment. When people just want to keep going and going and going, it's because they don't have a plan. There was nothing to accomplish. There was nothing set forth. There was nothing to be specific with, right? They're just hyperly obsessed with maybe burning calories, which is a terrible mindset to take on when it comes to exercise if you're just worried about burning calories. But you know, that just kind of brings it home to my preaching of why you always need a plan, right? It's more than just trying to progress physically. I mean, plans have huge psychological benefits. You know, the whole psychology behind making a list so you can check it off, and the psychology behind the accomplishment of checking something off. You know, it's essentially the same thing to having a plan. Because if you don't have a plan, one, you don't know where to start, but two, you don't know when to stop or where to stop, right? And if you don't know where to stop or when to stop, it's just as bad as not knowing where to start. So I tell them, like, hey, that's just my good opportunity to be like, hey, let's sit down and make a plan so we can give you some purpose and direction instead of you running around with like a chicken with their head cut off.
Okay. So there are a couple things I want to touch on there. There's the goal setting aspect that I keep bringing it up, and the bottom line is the importance of having the plan, the importance of having the program. The goals will be built into the program, so you don't have to necessarily worry about your individual goals on a daily basis, not your long range goals, because your plan or your program will have those goals already built in. It's already covered.
Right.
So that just goes back to the importance of having that plan in place. And on that note, I want to talk about another resource that is near and dear to all of us, and that is the financial resource. So I could easily be a listener, listening to you and I speak and say, okay, well, bottom line is, we talked about having a program. We talked about the necessity of having a quality workout. We talked about all these things. We talked about compliance and goal setting and all of that. And basically, as a layperson's opinion of that could just say, okay, so basically you're telling me that I need to hire a trainer to plan my workout because I'm not in a position to acquire all of that knowledge and experience in order to meet all of those objectives. So what do you say to that person who may be motivated or demotivated by the financial investment of hiring a trainer? Are there ways to bring the cost down? Are there ways to get at the problem from a different angle? Like, what do you basically tell that person?
Sure. I mean, essentially somebody who doesn't have that much experience, but they realize that they need to start their fitness and performance journey, if you will. The amount of money they're going to put into it is going to be dependent on how serious they take it. Now, granted, if budget is tight, or perhaps let's just be honest, it's not that serious to you right now, but you do want to get it started, then I would probably focus my money on a couple sessions with a trainer just to learn movements. Have them focus nothing, like not even put you through a workout, like, look, just teach me how to move and correct me and get these movements down. Because once you have the movements down, yeah, you might need some, form checks and things like that, but then you'll be able to move to some free resources in terms of like basic programs online, something structured. And again, it's a process. You don't have to have everything at once. So, maybe you see a coach once a week just to form check you while you're doing this free basic program online. And then a couple months go by, you still got that coach form checking you. Now you're ready to invest a little bit more money because it's getting a little bit more serious to you. So you get some online programming from a personalized coach, right? Online programming is a great way to save some money without constantly, needing to see a personal trainer 3 to 4 times a week. You can see that personal trainer once or twice a month for form checks and things like that, and then keep your online programming going. So it's with anything, it's how much do you want to invest? And you don't have to invest everything up front. Just let it be a natural process, right? If you understand you need to take it serious, let it naturally happen. And if you're not ready, then you're not ready.
Right. So that's something I think I'd like to dive into in a little more detail, is coming out with those. If we had, a handful of prospective clients and to say, well, if this is your level of commitment and this is what you're willing to invest, then you may want to go with maybe have 3 options or whatever, option A, B, and C, to say, this is what's required. This is the time investment, the energy investment, the financial investment. And if you're on the lower end of that scale, just because that's just where you are, you can still get in the gym and get some solid results. It's obviously you get back what you put in. So you're not going to get that cover magazine body that you're looking for in 30 days, which the magazine promises. But you will be on the road as long as we can ensure, because that's where we get to ensure the quality of the workout. And at that point, your commitment will dictate compliance. If you put in the time, effort, and energy, then you will make gains. It'll just be slower. But as your commitment gets a little bit deeper, then maybe now you're in category 2. You can step it up. Now you have more input from your trainer. And it's just a progression, you know, to meet that person where they are, to set the program that best fits where they are across all the important markers, and then move that person through some sort of progression. I'd like to really sit down and kind of do a deep dive into that at some point.
Yeah.
But that being one more thing I wanted to get your opinion on, as far as we've talked a lot about goal setting, planning, programming, and everything. I put that we want to be able to evaluate goals across different performance measurements. So I said number 1 was the objective fitness markers. So this is not the subjective stuff. So we're looking at, whatever can be measured that is not subjective. So we're talking about
weight, body fat, weight
it
lifted, times run.
It can even get into stuff like, blood pressure changes. If we and even into some of the subjective stuff, as long as we have an objective way of measuring it. So
Right.
if I have an objective way to measure your stress level over the course of 4 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever, then that is a subjective measurement that we now have objective data to look at.
Right. We can quantify it. Right.
Right. So I looked at the objective fitness markers. I looked at feelings, because that is something that we want to talk about in terms of compliance. And I just feel in general that your workout should feel good. This is a positive thing, and there's just like I know that I've fallen into this thought process or habit myself, thinking that the workout is going to suck. So if I think it's going to suck, I've already kind of reinforced that thought in my mind. I've conditioned myself to think that it's going to suck, I'm going to hate it, but it's necessary for the goal that I'm trying to reach. But just like we said about nutrition, you're not going to be compliant to a nutrition program that doesn't allow you to eat food that you enjoy eating.
Right.
Same thing.
So there's no longevity to it.
Right. The same thing with a fitness program. There's no longevity to doing something that you truly feel like it sucks. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
So I like to measure these goals or evaluate these goals in terms of certain feelings. And then we have just the performance markers. We have how fast are you running? How high are you jumping? How much weight are you lifting? Stuff like that. So, I like to look at those 3 different ways or 3 different angles of evaluating goal progress. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that or comment on any of those?
Absolutely. So I do have objective markers for subjective stuff. So in my programming, I have the sets, reps, days, layouts. But what isn't really noticeable when you see the spreadsheet is there's actually subjective markers, and there's the 2 most important things that I like to see a trend on, because it's important it's not even about like how was that day. I just want to see a trend. So how many times they responded a certain way over so many days and weeks, and that is before they start the workout. I ask them, or the program essentially asks them to check one of these. What's your mood right now? Are you motivated? Are you just here? Or are you not feeling it? Those are the 3 questions. They check one of those. They complete the workout, and then at the bottom, the next question is, or 1 question with 3 answers is too easy, accomplished, or exhausted, right? And so they give me a pre-measurement and a post-measurement to the workout. If they're constantly saying just here or not feeling it, well, then I'm going to be like, hey, what's going on in life? What's wrong? Is it, or it could be as simple as like, this month just wasn't for me, or hey, something was going on in my life. Conversely, if they answer like exhausted, I'm like, whoa, we need to dial this back. Or if it was too easy, it's like, okay, well, let's ramp it up a bit. Let's give you some more things to work with. So the subjective is too easy for a coach and a client to talk about, and it should be, right? If you're not talking to your clients, or you as a client aren't talking to your coach, always tell your coach how you're doing, right? For the listeners, like, tell your coach how you're doing, and if your coach doesn't care, then is he an asshole, or does he not know what he's doing? Would be my question. So the subjective is extremely important, and it's too easy to use this subjective purely to see trends, right? Like especially with as much online programming as I do, I can't just constantly be cranking out numbers and exercises and workouts if I don't get any feedback. Like I don't know what your next workout needs to be, your next month of training needs to be, if I don't know. Like, yeah, I see you objectively, but how are you? You know what I'm saying? So it's a huge factor.
And I think you need to stay on that for a second, because I just talked to someone the other day who had a really, really negative attitude towards online programming just because she had a horrible experience with it. And there was she said that she went to like a workshop or something like that on Olympic lifting, and this was a guy that was like nationally renowned for his Olympic lifting and all of that, and she bought into it. She purchased his online coaching, and she just happened to show it to another trainer, and it was basically just plugged in percentages. Like there was she said it basically, the trainer that she trusted to look at it said basically that there was not very much thought behind that program. It was just a list of exercises and a list of percentages, and that was it. So
sure.
I really appreciate what you said about the way that you handle your online clients, that it's a conversation. You know, we have the benefit of technology, so we can do a lot of stuff from remote locations now, but the importance of having a quality trainer means that we're looking for feedback in as many ways as we can from the client so that we can best serve that client. So I like your approach to that. Is there any kind of closing thoughts or anything that you want to say just to kind of wrap us up for today?
Yeah. Prioritization is huge and it's critical, and without it, you're a chicken with its head cut off. You've got to get yourself organized. You've got to talk to yourself. You got to figure out what you want, and you've got to get definition down in order to build something. There's what's called a SMART goal out there: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Right? If you're not establishing that, you're not going to accomplish anything. Like, what are you working for? What are you going to do? You can't just start going to a gym, or worse, going to these class-based training sessions, just kind of saying like, hey, I want to get in shape. Like, what? I mean, no, like, tell me what you want. We got to know what you want. You have to know what you want, because that's going to dictate not just your program, but what you're going to prioritize. Like, where do you need to spend your money? Where do you need to focus your time? Where are your faults at? We can kick your butt in the gym, but if your priority needs to be in your diet, well, we've got to get you to look at the picture, and we've got to get you to prioritize and rank order things so that you can get the most potent bang for your buck.
Right, absolutely. Can never underestimate the importance of prioritization. So, and there was so much information there. Once again, this is something we could probably spend the rest of the night talking on. We probably need to go ahead and wrap there.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Good talk, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait for the next one.